Thank you for joining me for the first part of Chapter 5, where we're going to evaluate leadership competence and professional competencies, professional skills, personal skills, and responsibilities. We're going to start today with a quote from Giosso Bursi, and he states that men are conquered only by love and kindness, by quiet, discreet example, which does not humiliate them and does not constrain them to give it. They dislike to be attacked by a man who has no other desire but to overcome them. And I'm sure most of us have felt this as being subordinates to other people, that we're much more likely to give our best when we feel supported, when we have great examples, than we are if we're expected to perform in a way that we don't see the others around us performing. So it's going to be very important to keep this in mind as we become good leaders, good co-workers, and even just good friends. Now, for Chapter 5, we're breaking it into two separate sections, so I'm just going to be lecturing on the first half of this chapter. However, our learning objectives, I'm going to go ahead and delve into what we can expect for next week as well. So first of all, we're going to describe the complexity of the healthcare industry in terms of workforce, environment, societal expectations, and explain how a leader's mastery of competencies can influence processes, motivation, interpersonal relationships, and communication capabilities that are necessary to successfully navigate the complexity of what healthcare is today. We're also going to explain how the complexity of healthcare workforce may lead to communication failure and conflict, and summarize the use of quality communication and conflict management skills to successfully motivate subordinates, build interdisciplinary teams, and lead a health organization based on commitment rather than compliance or resistance. We'll also predict the outcomes of continuous use of avoiding in healthcare or health organization, as compared to competing strategies, as compared to compromising, accommodating, and problem-solving strategies. Predict the outcomes of face-to-face communication as compared to the use of memos, communication channels, and media to disseminate ambiguous and urgent messages. We'll also analyze the healthcare leader's competencies in terms of knowledge, skills, and abilities discussed in the chapter, differentiating the competencies described here with those not discussed. By combining several theories and models, we'll be able to design an influence, power, and motivation leadership model for the use in healthcare organizations focused on subordinate commitment, modify this example with the use of interdisciplinary health teams or groups, and explain why this modification was necessary. We'll also be able to evaluate competencies. Competencies are knowledge, skills, and abilities found in leadership practice concerning situational assessment, interpersonal relationships, influence processes, motivation, communication, all of which is necessary to lead healthcare organizations, and then you'll be able to ultimately support your evaluation. So the complexity in the dynamic healthcare environment, you guys are all well aware. You've spent enough time in clinical sites to recognize that it is a very complex area. As you grow in your career, and if you change to a lead technologist, a manager of a department, and move up the ladder in that form, you'll find that things become even more complex. So as from our area as a working stenographer, you can see some of the challenges within the department, and you can see how your immediate leaders can really improve or make those challenges more difficult. One of the things you don't always see is the complexity behind the management and why they're making the decisions they do. So as you go up the ladder, as I mentioned, it's going to become very much more complex, which is something that we should recognize at all levels, and especially as a leader, perhaps provide transparency to subordinates so that they understand that complexity and are possibly more willing to work within the confines that the area is given. So as I mentioned, the healthcare industry is very dynamic. It means it's changing all the time. It's a fluid atmosphere. It's got to change with the needs of the community, as well as changes in any sort of legislative statutes or regulations that are coming down the pike. Also, to keep hospitals' doors open and afloat, they have a lot of regulations that come via insurance companies or Medicare and Medicaid, and those are all things that contribute to the dynamics within a hospital organization. In order to be very proactive in this dynamic and complex environment, health leaders have to be competent and motivated, and really ultimately to have the best outcomes, you need to have good leaders at every single level. The health industry requires that competency and urgency serve as hallmarks of leadership for the healthcare organization. If we can foresee challenges coming well in advance, it's much easier to address these challenges. However, we know sometimes in healthcare, the challenges are immediate, meaning a disruption to a supply chain, or a brand new regulation that wasn't expected, or losing insurance, or losing a physician or other workforce. So all of those things must be strategized and handled with good communication in order to optimize our ability to maintain a good work environment as well as good patient care for our patients while still adhering to all the necessary regulations and requirements. So because of this, the need for professionalization and competence are especially important. So you guys are all part of a competency-based program. Every time that you need to prove that you're capable of something, you have to go prove that you can do it. So we don't just take somebody's word for the fact that you can complete a complete abdomen exam. We have somebody that is registered that's going to watch you and critique you and evaluate you while you prove that you're capable of doing that. Well, in the leadership world, that hasn't always been done. And so what we're going to talk about today is how a lot of competencies have been developed to ensure that as a leader, they are as competent at their jobs as you are at yours. When you have a competency, they indicate that you must require mastery of a special skill and learning from experiences, and that those levels of mastery are required to become a professional. The healthcare workforce is, as you know, a complex assortment of individuals with different backgrounds, educational experiences, certification, specialties, and work locations. Now, within a hospital, you're going to see many different allied health professions. You're going to see many different nursing professions. You're going to see specialists in every area, as well as working with physicians and then administration. So as a whole, the ultimate healthcare workforce comprises up to 12% of the total U.S. workforce. So it's a huge component of our national economy. With that being said, from a leadership perspective, it can be very, very challenging to understand what is required of each of these individuals within the workforce from a credentialing level, from an education level, let alone their own cultural or individual needs. So the considerations here for leadership are massive. So as a leader in the complex world of healthcare, some of the important issues are the leader's ability to focus groups and individuals towards a mission, vision, and tasks of the organization. And for this to occur, you have to be very clear and transparent on the facility's mission statement, the vision of the type of care and the type of buy-in from employees they expect. And then they need to also be clear with the specific tasks that will make that vision and mission successful. The leader has an ability to decide which individuals' skills and competencies should be employed to add the greatest value to the organization. So this comes really to a human resources standpoint. It's not infrequent that a leader, a lead of sonography, or a manager of an imaging department is going to have to go make a very strong case to hire individuals with the appropriate skills that they need to maintain their workforce. Sometimes this can be challenging when you're working up to a higher level administration and they don't understand the intricacies of your department. Sometimes this can be a real challenge to convince somebody of what is needed. As a leader, important issues are the utilization of communication. So being open, transparent, and yet being able to collect the data to fight for what your department needs is going to be essential. They also have to be motivational to their subordinates, demonstrating through their own actions and their own excitement in what they do the kind of buy-in that is needed to have a successful department. They also need to practice good cultural development skills to create systems and processes and a cultural environment that's valuable and is valued by the employees and is efficient so that the healthcare organization can be successful within the environment in which it performs its mission. A lot of that efficiency that we talk about here, that motivation, a lot of that comes from really good, efficient processes. So that can prevent some employee burnout that comes with inefficiency in the department, poor scheduling, redundancy in paperwork, poor scheduling. All of those things can be very challenging and can have a dramatic effect. So as a leader, they need to be visionaries on how to streamline those processes, make it more pleasant for the employee as well as the patient, and then also be able to communicate the importance of those changes with even higher up management so that the administrators have buy-in to the changes as well. So these leadership challenges are salient for leaders throughout the industry, regardless of the type of healthcare organization, often regardless of the level of administration. It can even come down to you as a working technologist really pushing management to come see your daily processes in order to understand that perhaps you need a greater workforce or you need more time on exams or something of that nature. Another important issue is the ability of appreciating different knowledge, skills, and abilities. So we know that, your CEO of your hospital may be a charming, wonderful businessman, although they probably have very, very little knowledge of what a sonographer actually does in their daily routine. So at any level, having that appreciation of the different skills that each employee is bringing to the table is essential. Being able to listen to experiences and ideas from those that are actually producing the exams is going to be very important in ensuring long-term employee retention. Appreciating those differences also allows for opportunity and the ability to sometimes bypass challenges that would come in the future from less open communication and less appreciation. So it's essential from a leader's perspective to find the proper mix of professionals that can be formed into a team, provide that team with the proper resources, and then set appropriate expectations for the team so that everybody has buy-in, and those that don't buy into the mission perhaps can find opportunities elsewhere. Now, learning about each discipline and knowing what capability each type of healthcare professional can competently perform will allow the leader to make the most efficient use of the valuable resources, the people working there. And this is essential that they understand the standards of care in each of the allied health divisions, and so we can make sure that people are not being expected to complete tasks they ethically should not be doing. It also can help reduce redundancy or stepping on feet of other departments when they have those clear guidelines and they can align the expectations of the workers very specifically according to their strongest skills, knowledge, and behaviors. Now, there's been a lot of, I found in our text, one of the most interesting parts of this week's reading was really reading about some of the innovators when it came to physician training. So back in the early 1900s, really physicians were basically completing an internship. They were following around another physician, doing the hands-on time, but they never had any actual didactic components. And so there was a lot of variation between different areas of the country and the type of medical care that was being offered, especially as new technology was being developed and as new knowledge was gained. And so from back in the early 1900s, they really started pushing to have some consistency in physician education. And fortunately, that really took hold, and now there's, very defined curriculum in which all physicians must be required to study and pass in order for them to practice. Well, fortunately, that didn't stop just with physicians. It went ahead and it has trickled down to all kinds of other healthcare allied health providers. So even from your perspective in a sonography program, we've been very transparent with you about our accreditation requirements, about the ARDMS requirements, and you see that while those requirements may be complex and challenging to meet, they do ensure a certain level of competency in order to enter a profession. And so that has been a significant change that has really, in the last 120 years, has really made a difference into the kind of care and treatments that patients are able to get. That being said, it doesn't mean that even with all of these checks and balances in place, it still doesn't mean that all of our patients are getting the adequate care. And so that's another issue that still has to be managed at a leadership level. Now, aside from just the curriculum development to ensure safe practices in medicine, we also have a lot of professional associations, which through sonography. Our main professional association is really the SDMS. And the SDMS would be a brother or sister society to perhaps a nursing professional association, or a physician, the ACR, the radiologists professional association. So there's going to be unique professional associations across the spectrum of all the different health professions. And because of this, these professional associations, they are the experts in their particular area. And they have, because each profession has a different education, licensure, credentialing, and maintenance requirements, the professional associations are really going to be in charge of those different requirements, as well as a number of other things. So the associations and societies, like for us, it's the ARDMS, offers credentialing. And then the society, the SDMS, really offers us ethical guidance. They come out with new sets of standards on how we should operate within the profession. They also come out with directives or white papers when they want to have all the sonographers practicing under a certain standard. So they do a lot of work in that realm. In addition to that, they can offer very valuable connections and networking opportunities with like-minded thinkers that are prepared to help grow the profession, improve performance across the board. So these are very, very valuable. Now, there was a push where you look into the hospital system and you have nurses, radiology technologists, sonographers, respiratory therapists, physical therapists, all of these different groups of people. They are abiding by their professional standards outlined by their professional associations. They're maintaining licensure. They are obtaining credentialing, and they're doing all these wonderful things to help ensure that they are meeting a standard level of care. Well, until much more recently, there really was nothing guiding leadership. So you could be a good leader, you could be a bad leader, and maybe nobody could prove it because there was no actual standards outlining exactly what you should or shouldn't be competent in. So a recent collaboration of 5 professional associations have created 5 domains and 300 competencies for the health leader and manager. So this now provides some actual specific guidance to leaders about what they should be effective at and what they should be competent in. And we're going to look at those here in just a few moments. So this professional association's mission is to keep its members, leaders, managers, and stakeholders within the healthcare industry updated on a changing environmental focus, as well as providing them guidance on the competencies they should be successful with. So if we look at the first one, and I do realize this is kind of small, so I'm going to apologize in advance, but you'll see that the first domain is a lot of leadership. So domain 2 listed here describes, okay, the main focus of this domain is leadership. The first line demonstrates that they are expecting knowledge of leadership styles and techniques. So if you're an upcoming sonographer and your manager just quit and they say, hey, we want you to manage this department, this is something you need to go to. You need to look at this and say, okay, as a sonographer, do I have knowledge of leadership styles and techniques? And if the answer is no, in order to ethically take that position, you would identify this as something that you would need to, study on and address. So, and you'll always have this book with you if you need that. Now, leadership, the next line, leadership, we want knowledge of personal journey disciplines. And this, again, if you are not familiar with this is something you would need to assess. Now, number 3 on the line here is leadership skill. So this means it's an actual activity you have to be competent at, not a knowledge that you have to obtain. So this is the ability to gain physician buy-in to accept risk and support new business ventures. So you have to have the skill to be able to go grow your department. Okay. The next is a skill to adhere to legal and regulatory standards. This means you have to be competent at evaluating, reading, assessing legal and regulatory standards, and then finding policies and procedures to implement in order to ensure that you're meeting those. The next one is another leadership skill, and it's to advocate and participate in healthcare policy initiatives such as uninsured crisis, medical malpractice, access to healthcare, patient safety. So this maybe will come more from a quality assurance end. Perhaps you need to find the issues in your department or in your area of supervision and identify ways to make them better and then go out and do it. Next is a skill is to anticipate and plan strategies for overcoming obstacles. This is a way to be proactive rather than reactive. It might encourage you to come up with long-term plans, to strategize about how you will deal with the next pandemic, how you might deal with a workforce shortage, might you prevent a workforce shortage. You guys are all very familiar right now with the current workforce shortage in sonography. From a management level, being proactive with that, starting to see your workforce become retirement age or noticing morale in your department is low, that's something you want to predict and start to make a plan for well in advance so you're not devastated if it does happen. And anticipate the need for resources and carry out initiatives. That again kind of feeds into what we were just talking about. Another leadership skill is to assess the organization, including corporate values and cultures, business processes, and the impact of systems on operations. This is the ability to look at the functioning of your organization, identify areas that could be improved, and then taking action to improve them. And then the next skill is champion solutions and encourage decision making. Still under the leadership domain, we have another skill, create an organizational climate that encourages teamwork. Now, this is certainly a skill. This is where a lot of our lecture from last week week 2 about personality traits and strengths and weakness comes into play. So being able to develop a climate by you being the positive influence might require you to take a close look at your personality traits and other things so that you can work on any weaknesses, optimize strengths, and then build that teamwork environment. Another skill is to create an organizational climate that facilitates individual motivation, which kind of feeds off of the last one we talked about, and then develop external relationships. So developing external relationships would be going out and meeting with physicians, making sure that they're sending their patients to you, making sure that they know perhaps that your ultrasound lab is accredited by the ACR. Those types of things are invaluable in order to keep your workplace moving, keeping people motivated, and keeping the patients coming in the doors. The next one is another skill, to establish a compelling organizational vision and goals. Next skill is to establish organizational culture that values and supports diversity. That may require you to go back and do some diversity studies or some cultural climate assessment in order to build up skill in that area if it's not something you've been familiar with. The next is skill explore opportunities for growth and development as on a continuous basis. It can't be done once and then wait 6 or 7 years. It must be done, something that's done on a regular, predictable basis. Leadership skill, foster an environment of mutual trust. Again, this can be done really through great leadership. And hold self and others accountable for organizational goal attainment, which means usually is going to require some data collection. It's going to require some goal setting, and then it's going to require action plans when you aren't meeting what you have set your goals to meet. Okay, still in the leadership domain, another skill would be to incorporate and apply management techniques and theories. That again may be an area where you need to go build your knowledge in order to accomplish that. Then plan for leadership succession. Make sure that you're leaving everything in order just in case the worst were to happen. At any level, from the management level to maybe just your workforce level. Promote and manage change, promote continuous organizational learning and improvement. Perhaps that means putting into play a continuing education opportunity for your workforce, things like that. And then represent physician interests in negotiating and managing relationships with hospitals, insurance companies, and others, and support and mentor high potential talent within the organization. And that really goes with some of that succession planning. So this kind of gives you an idea. If you look at the right of the screen, I should have mentioned this earlier, but these are those 5 different societies or associations that were involved in developing this list. And it goes to show just how much in agreement they are on all of these items. So a lot of these you can look at and you could say, well, yeah, as a sonographer, I would be pretty competent in that. In others, you might say, well, wow, this is new to me. And really, from a leadership end, there's going to be a lot new to you. But what we really need are really strong internal candidates that have the perspective of a sonographer, that has the experience, you know what works and doesn't work on a departmental level. Take those skills, take that knowledge, add the leadership components so you can go and you can drive change where it really matters. So I hope you find some of these competencies fascinating, interesting at least, and are willing to maybe look into, if not now, but know that at some point in the future, these are some skills and some knowledge you'd like to develop so you can go on to become a leader of this great profession. So with that, I will let you go for today's lecture, and we will continue with Chapter 5 next week. Have a wonderful rest of your day.